Welcome to the Human Advantage podcast, where culture is created, not claimed. We've been talking about culture for years, but most companies still reduce people to check boxes that are supposed to define an entire human being. We hire for familiarity, we reward sameness, and then wonder why teams struggle. The problem isn't talent, it's the system. And this podcast is about changing that. Diversity beyond checkboxes, culture add over culture fit, and how people think is the real differentiator. Because people aren't categories, they're the advantage.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Human Advantage podcast. We got myself, Adam Kleckner, joined by my co-host, Devon Walker today, and we are joined by Joshua McLindsay today. He's a retail planner, strategist, team builder, for sure, with 20 years experience across merchandising, planning, demand forecasting, and cross-functional leadership. So Josh has worked across some of the most recognizable names in retail: Nike, Gap, Groupon, Kroger, you name it, you've done it, buddy. So helping teams turn complexity into clarity and move inventory from a liability into a competitive edge. But where we connected, he's also written a lot about his ADHD, anxiety, introverted leadership, and the quiet strengths that help shape how people lead, think, and contribute. Today, we're going to talk about leadership beyond the loudest voice in the room, cognitive diversity, team alignment, and what it means to build systems where different kinds of thinkers can actually thrive. So welcome, buddy. I'm excited for this one.
Well, thank you, man. I thought you were talking about somebody else with that intro. I appreciate it. Sounds good.
Yeah. But when I mentioned the ADHD, we're both like, yeah, okay, no, it's us. That's us for sure.
I mean, yeah, that was a big intro. Well, I mean, because I know both of you have known each other. I'm a little bit newer to me and you, Josh. But so I got to ask, just to start things off.
Sure.
You know, because you've been in retail, planning, forecasting, leadership, at all these amazing companies. Like, what really brought you in, or what originally brought you into that world?
Yeah, that was actually my grandmother and some of my family business on my mom's side. They had a flower shop and a restaurant, and it was in a small town, Rock Falls, Illinois. And a lot of us kids and grandkids, when we were old enough to kind of walk and talk, we always spent time there, but we were also expected to chip in and help. So whether it was checking in the flowers off the truck, if we were had working with our uncle, he always liked to have us take all of the different thorns off of the roses and things like that. And so that was not a fun job, but it was one that needed to be done. But we would learn how to make arrangements, work with the customers and do that. Every once in a while, of course, get over there and go wash dishes and things like that. So you were involved in the business from very early on. But it wasn't until I actually was 16 and needed gas money that I ended up getting a job at a Reebok outlet store that was close to our house. And I was like, well, I need gas money. I need to get going. And it just so happened to be the same summer that I had broke my thumb playing basketball for high school. And so I couldn't play that whole season. So I'm like, well, this is what I'm doing. And it was my first boss that was telling me how good I was at sales, so to speak. And he's like, kid, you could sell ketchup popsicles to a woman in white gloves. And I was like, is that from Tommy Boy? He's like, yeah, it is from Tommy Boy.
It is.
But I was like, I'm not selling to these people. I'm just answering their questions and I'm doing customer service. And so the whole sales thing, I've never wanted to take a sales role. For me, retail was always just customer service. It was we're offering something to them, but if the person down the hall at the other mall location has a better option, then they have a better option. It is what it is kind of thing. But once I fell into that and working on my own, I got the feeling of all of the things that I learned from the family business and just being around, it's just building a community, having pride in the work that you do. I was like, yeah, retail is kind of my thing, I guess. And I just kind of stayed in it for the rest of my career.
I love that, man.
Sounds so simple.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, it's hilarious, dude, because listening to the kind of family businesses, it always reminds me of the early jobs, dude. I grew up bucking bales and throwing hay bales and all those. I feel like those early farm jobs, hands get dirty jobs, they kind of shape that attitude as you get older,
And Devon, being in an air conditioned mall or an interior location, especially now working behind a computer, we grew up where there was a lot of farms. So I lasted maybe one day detasseling corn and I was like, nope, Not for me. Not doing that. We had to, bale hay and do things like that every once in a while too. And I was like, yeah, I don't think so. I think I'm good. So,
Dude, I remember when I took my brother one time. He's not the field worker like I was. And I took him one time to Buck Bales, at 6 o'clock in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, and he's wearing shorts. And I go, dude, you do not want to wear shorts.
nope,
He's like, it's gonna be hot. It's fine. And it comes
doesn't
back
matter.
just scratched up all
Yep.
over his legs itching for a week. I was like, I told you, dude. I told you. Hilarious. All right, well, I'll pivot us because this is our ADHD brains. We'll always get off on tangents here.
Yeah.
But you've been open about yours. Obviously, I talk about mine on LinkedIn and social media a lot. But the one thing that I think you touch on that I love that I don't think it's talked about enough is more of that introvert in corporate environments, right? And it's funny, I had this conversation with a buddy over the weekend when we were golfing. He's like, you're an introverted person, but you're so social. You're a people person, so you come out extroverted. But I know you, and I know you're really introverted. And it's that I think it is that ADHD dilemma where we're naturally we're people persons, but we also are way more introverted than I think a lot of people realize. And I think not enough leaders talk about that introvertedness because we're supposed to be so outward facing and we're supposed to lead teams in a more outgoing way. But I think more leaders are introverted than what people realize. And that's one thing that I don't know, man, when we connected probably a year, half, 2 years ago, and you posted that, I was like, oh, that's so true. It needs to be talked about more. So, with that, I'd love to kind of open up your story a little bit about that, what got you starting to post about not just the ADHD side, but the introverted leadership side, because I think it's something more people need to hear that little, it's something could get brushed over, but that little piece I think needs to be told more.
Yeah. And, and for me, it wasn't until I had to lead a larger team that it started to show up of just thinking about, I have to stand in front of 10, 15 people. And then at Nike, you would have to do trainings. You're like, well, there's going to be 200 and some people and you'll be up on stage. How do you deal with that? I'm like, great, sure. Let's go for it. And just kind of being thrust into those environments, you just have to then almost compartmentalize yourself and be like, okay, I'm talking about a topic I know very well. There's some people right in the front row that are either on my team or friends of mine. I'm just going to speak to them. Forget everybody else is out there. And you just kind of get through it. And so it never really goes away. The only thing that helped me, I think, really get through it is around 2022-ish. I knew I was going to be taking a bigger role on at Nike. And so we had different benefits going on at Nike where you could get a career coach and you can even get a therapist. And I was like, well, I don't know which one I need, but let's do both. And then we'll talk with them and I'll be open about like, hey, here's how I show up at work. Here's what I wish I could be like and what I see in others. And here's how I'm really showing up and the feedback that I get from leadership. And so just kind of being open and honest about that. It wasn't until going through that they're like, actually, have you ever been tested for ADHD? Have you ever done anything like that? I'm like, no. So then I got tested by both and they do different tests. And I met with somebody local. So I went 3 different tests. Sure enough, yep, have it. But then that's when they were able to break it down for me. And they're like, hey, you have a lot of creativity and a lot of pattern recognition. Yes, you have some anxiety that goes along with that, but that helps you in your preparation for things because you don't just spin on the negative, but you're spinning on what if it goes well and how do I prepare to make it go well? So then you're using that anxiety. And then for the introversion part, it just taught me more about I'm listening a lot more than I'm talking, which I mean, there's the old adage if you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you're supposed to, but it works in your advantage because you're sitting in meetings and you're just studying other people. And even though other leaders are like talking just to hear themselves speak, I don't ever do that. And so it's hard for me to show up in meetings like that. But if I lead with that and I tell my new boss or whoever, like, hey, I'm not going to be the loudest in the room. I'm not going to be the one that talks the most in this meeting. I'm listening a lot. I want to hear from people, but that also gives other people on my team the chance to speak up and do that. And so once they know that, then they kind of get it. Where I've had leaders in the past be like, hey, you didn't say anything in that meeting. And somebody at your level, you need to. I'm like, well, here's why I didn't. Here's how I show up. Here's kind of my quirks. And it was around that same time when I also found out that being like an introvert as well as a leader, I built a one-pager and I was like, here's how you get the best out of me. Yes, I have ADHD and I'm kind of in one of those people that I do have anxiety. I am more of an introvert, but here's how you get the best out of me, and here's where you probably won't. So like, here's
Right.
like the 1-page game plan about how to work with me or whatever. And the leaders that have gotten that have actually loved it, and they're like, this is great. It's like a how-to manual about how to get the most out of you as a leader and as a person. And then they also know where to chime in and help me grow as a person, because that's equally as important.
For sure,
Yeah.
man. I love that you've realized that about yourself and you've built the comfort in giving that one pager, because I think that's why this conversation is so important, because I think other leaders need to hear, like, it's okay to say that. It's okay to put that out there.
Yeah.
And our systems still reward the fastest talker, right? Interview loops
Sure.
typically reward the person who's gonna speak right when the question's done and come up with the fastest solution. And in reality, sometimes those are the worst people to hire, right? Because they're not taking the time to process and digest and understand, really what you're getting at. And I think without putting that out there, some people are like, oh, they just don't know. They don't know the answer. They don't know what the solution is. It's like, no.
Yeah.
Let me process so I can give you a thoughtful response back.
Absolutely.
But I don't think that's put out in the world enough. So I love that part of this conversation for sure.
There's definitely leaders that are more of like a Michael Scott from The Office, and just they're finding the sentence as they're talking. They really don't know, but they know they have to be first out of the gate to say something. And that's definitely not me. I would rather hear from other people in the room if they're really firm on what they need to say or whatever they need to get out. Like, get it out. So
yeah,
I mean, I think it's just really that cultural pressure, because everybody assumes leaders have to quote unquote lead from the front, which is not always true. Like, you can lead from the back, lead from the middle. And I think, being open about that also subconsciously tells other people that they're allowed to do that as well.
Yeah.
Even if it's at a higher level or even at a lower level. So, I'm applauding you for that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it is hard, because there's people that will even be on my team that I need to lead, and they'll look at me and be like, why didn't you speak up more? What was going on? And that's usually in the early days when we start working together, and then they start to pick it up that, like, I don't need to speak for you. You're in the room with us, or you're at that table with us.
Right.
You have an equal voice. And I've had one leader even say it as like, if you kind of build out a pyramid, because that's the whole hierarchy thing of like, if you're the leader at top and the rest of the team is below you, in reality, you should be more of a servant leader, where that pyramid should be upside down. They're all doing the work. You're supposed to be in service of them, or kind of block and tackle and get things out of the way. So they're doing the work, and you're trying to help enable them to do the work easier, to train them to get better and things like that. And I think once my team usually knows that, then they feel like, okay, I can speak up in a meeting, and Josh isn't going to look at me and be like, why did you speak up? Or why did you say X, Y, and Z? Right. Like, we all should be showing up equally together. And in reality, it's not a pyramid that's right side up or upside down. It's flat. We just all have different roles within the company, and we all are coworkers together.
Yeah.
That's great.
Leading that way, let's your team, and that's how we joke all the time with our company structure of like, we're so good at different things, but it balances each other out. And I'm like, thank God we have Tia doing, I was joking with her the other day because I had to do we were signing up new client, new MSA. And I was like, God, I hate putting these together. Like, I just love the meeting and strategizing it and figuring out what they need and solving the problem. She's like, I love that stuff. She's like, I hate that part. I'm like, thank God. Like, we're so different, and same with Devon. Like, he comes at things with a completely different lens. But I think too often we want to look for who's the same as us instead of who's different and who brings different strengths. But I love that visual of it. It's kind of a flat line. We're all good at different things. That's how teams are built.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And when you have leadership or coworkers around you that understand that, then that kind of lets their guard down too. Like, okay, you can pick me up when I need it here, but I can help you here and feel like you're valued. And it just is a really great, like, symbiotic relationship.
For sure.
Well, I have a question about this, because obviously, like, pyramid, upside down pyramid, very big. When like managing and leading these environments, how do you balance the like performance and the humanity as a leader, especially like some of these environments, like let's say a large company, Fortune 500, that's going to be very metric heavy. Like, where do you fall? Where should I be? What does that all look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that is trying to look at people as people individually and say, what do you need to do to get great at your role? And then how does that connect with the broader KPIs of the business? Like, what does your role actually expect? And how does that tie into the greater vision or the greater goals of what the company is trying to do? And then you can start to work on that, because then you're judging them about without a name, without an actual person in that role, how is that role performing for what we're doing? And then you start to
Yeah.
put the human aspect of that and say, okay, what do they need to do better in this role? And what do they need to do to grow along their career path to start training them there? So you can hold accountability and keep standards high, but you don't necessarily have to like grade them as just them solely by themselves. It's never about them as a person. It's about how they contribute to everybody else.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think so. One thing that we don't think about enough, I think, with the leadership side is obviously you're leading your team, right? Your team of data analysts or metric driven folks. But you also, in large corporations, you're working cross-functionally all the time, right? You're working with engineering, you're working with product, you're working with different leaders. And each one of those, I'm not going to say, everybody in UX is super artsy or creative or like, but there is some stigmas that kind of go, okay, the data people are like this, the engineering is like this, Um, but how do you look at creating environments where those different thinking styles and those different ways of approaching things feel safe contributing? Because I think sometimes it's hard for maybe a product person to go into the room with the data folks who's maybe a little more creative and a little more, and try to feel safe, like saying, hey, have you thought about this? Because it maybe isn't their wheelhouse or how they're naturally wired.
Yeah. I think that's where I go back to. I'm really loving Formula One lately. Last couple of years, I've been like ramping up my ambitions of like how much I'm watching it. And I'm really loving it. And I think one of my favorite people in Formula One is not even a driver, but it's a principal. So it's Toto Wolff, who, a part owner and principal of Mercedes. And he has this whole thing about you don't blame the person, you blame the process. And that works when you're looking at how we work together as well. Because if we have a process there's psychological safety, that isn't about lowering standards, it's about just driving more accountability without the blame, then you focus less on the individual's mistake and more about what are we learning when something does go wrong to change the process, to change like how we can hear from each individual person on the team. And I think when you do that, that's what then makes it safe for people to be like, hey, I don't know if you've ever thought about designing a shoe like this, but here's what I think I would like to see as a consumer or whatever. And you're hearing that from, a woman in HR that might be just in your meeting. Great. It doesn't matter what your title is. You're part of this team. Let's all hear, because at the end of the day, we all are consumers of the product that we're probably planning for, or we're merchandising, or we're going and we're allocating out to the stores. We all have an equal voice as just counterparts. And if you don't say it, then that's probably going to do a disservice to us at some point. And that's where I think we need to be really great about, is making sure that anything is not a dumb question or a dumb, thought that you have. Like, let's just get it out there in the open and let's talk about it. I mean, at the end of the day, it is really about like, if we have diverse perspectives, we're creating better outcomes because people like actually feel safe contributing. They feel safe. And the best leaders aren't experts at everything, but we should be students of everything. And so if everybody has that mindset of like, hey, I don't know everything, so I want to hear from everybody, that way I'm also making myself better and everybody else feels comfortable and they're getting better as well.
Yeah, I love that, dude, especially in your space, because in retail and planning and all that stuff, like your point there, you are a consumer of the product as well. Well, your consumers are diverse. Your team needs to reflect diverse opinions, diverse thoughts, diverse inputs. And I love what you brought up about, don't blame the person, blame the process, because that's something, Devon and I and Tia, we preach all the time. It's not a people problem. Usually it's a systems problem. And we, instead of process, we look at systems all the time. And what are the systems behind why you're getting the outcomes you're getting? And typically your systems, currently corporate systems reward conformity. They reward the loudest voice in the room. They reward the fastest talker. And so we look at, well, what are your systems actually rewarding? And are they actually being inclusive? Because I think a lot of times, we have these systems that claim to be inclusive and claim to build the best culture, when in reality those systems by proxy end up segregating people, end up separating people. And so I'm like, can we stop rewarding the fastest talker, the loudest talker, the the same people, the same uniformity, and look at diversity of thought, look at cognitive diversity, look at this, how do we create systems that actually bring people together instead of by proxy divide?
And it's a very hard thing, because you as a person then also get stuck in that, and you're hearing great ideas from one person, or maybe they're the loudest talker and everybody is kind of getting elevated in a meeting, and you're like, really leaning in then and be like, yes, I love that. I love that. I love that. Before you know it, 30 minutes or an hour is up and you're like, I didn't hear from the
Yeah,
other like 20% of
Yep.
the people in the
Yep.
room.
for
Oh,
sure.
like, and then you end up
Yeah,
having to be like, okay, I'll catch up with them later in the hallway, or I'll message them later and catch up. So you try and make up for a little bit, but then I have
yeah,
that little note on next week's meeting about like, hey, remember to like ask them first about something, just to kind of, so you have to get better as a leader too. You have to catch yourself in those moments and be like, shit, okay, I didn't show up all that time. I need to do better about that.
yeah. I
Yeah.
love that.
I mean, I think that's great. I think that's great. I mean, looking at that, because a lot of these processes, a lot of them are great, a lot of them are bad, but they're always created by somebody. And some of those people have a hard time understanding diversity of thought because they're just in their own minds and it's like one person building that.
Oh yeah.
So when it comes to like diversity of thought, how does that actually impact the business, either from like a system level or even just like, one-on-one in these projects?
Yeah. I mean, diversity of thought is very, very important because it's one of the biggest advantages that organizations have, is because if you think like, hey, these couple of people think exactly like, and that's where our bread and butter is, and that's how we're going to win, maybe, and maybe that works in the short term. The problem is the consumers that you are actually servicing, they're very diverse. So why are we not mimicking that inside of our four walls and also thinking that same way? Because they're thinking a million different things. They're getting a million different inputs from social media, from friends and family, whatever. So why are we letting that voice be owned internally by only like one or two people or a handful of people? So one of the reasons I think that diversity of thought really matters is it because each of us has a blind spot. And if we're opening that up, that helps kind of eliminate those blind spots. And so the goal is trying to build a team where the different perspectives help eliminate those, because different does not mean deficient. It actually should be
100%.
celebrated more.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's so important we talk about that diversity of thought because
Yeah.
I think for a long time, at least the past 5 years, diversity has really been boiled down to labels and check boxes, right? It's
Yeah.
do you check this box? You and I both check the box for ADHD. That doesn't mean we show up the exact same into the workplace, right?
Yep.
We talk about Tia all the time and her, yes, she checks the box for African American, but that doesn't say that her growing up as the only black female in her high school in Montana is the same as somebody who grew up in
Correct.
Chicago or LA or
Yeah.
New York or wherever, right? And so I think looking at diversity through a much more human lens, in my opinion, of we're all unique. We all look at the world differently.
Yeah.
We all have different lived experiences. We all have different ways that we are wired and process and
Absolutely.
think. To me, that's what helps you build and innovate and look at things differently. And so what are some moments that because I know obviously we've met forever. I know you think similarly, you look for different perspectives, but what are some outcomes you've seen when you bring all that together?
Yeah, I think that one's really difficult because there's some parts where leaders actually get it and they celebrate that and they want to hear it. And they provide the stage for those folks to actually share their insights, their stupid questions, their side notes, the random commentary, all of it.
Yeah.
All of that helps, right?
Yeah.
But it's so meaningful to have that success that I've had in my career, is to hear that cross-functional collaboration. That one of the things that I learned is that most of the problems, they aren't unique planning problems or unique merchandising problems or unique finance problems. It's not like, oh, supply chain is only seeing this and they've never seen that before from anybody else. They're just all normal business problems. So the real challenge is that in every function, we need to be able to be open and see the problem through different lenses and hear them. And for me, like, none of those perspectives are wrong. They're just incomplete if we look at them just in the silo. That magic really happened when it comes together. And I think one of the roles that, for me, that was like the biggest insight, the biggest aha, was when I worked on the Jordan brand for Nike. The role was like business integration. And it was a role that was actually adopted from our EMEA team in Europe. And they wanted somebody that sat in the middle. And they wanted to be able to hear from our merchandising counterparts, our financial planning. We need to hear from like anybody that's in allocation, from finance, from even our sales team. So what they had to do is they had to integrate all of their different like stories that they tell themselves. Well, my partner, Foot Locker, needs this, Finish Line needs this, or whatever. And I've promised them this retro or like the AJ1 or whatever. And you go to finance, they're like, well, this is what we're doing, and this is the CAGR over the next few years, and how does that support that? And you go to the other team, and they're like, we make that AJ1 in the same factory we make the Air Force One, so you technically can't even make this many amount of units. How are you going to still hit the financials? Or how are you going to align that to those other teams? So they sat in the middle. And I think that was the first role where it really like dawned on me, like, holy cow, like you never know all these different people's perspectives. And then on top of that, it's like, well, their boss has different expectations of them, or the company has expectations of what that role is. And here's what winning looks like to them versus what it looks like to us. We could be on the same team and have different goals. So if you don't break down those barriers, nobody really knows that. And then they're all just out to win for themselves selfishly, and they probably don't even know it.
Love that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, well, a perfect way to view it up. Because I mean, all these different perspectives, all these different looks, and admittedly, massive Jordan fan. I have a lot of J's.
Nice.
This is amazing.
Love it.
But like, with all these different perspectives, and I'm gonna bring AI into this because everything's changing with AI.
Sure.
Do you find like the human side of this? Because like everything about that was, there's process, but it's all human input and all these different teams and what they view as like the great shoe and like how to expand it. Where do you find that like human side of leadership coming in with this change in AI and automation, with it reshaping everything?
I think, without giving away my age, for somebody of my age and probably our age, and also being a huge Jordan fan, when AI came up, I'm like, man, a lot of people are loving Allen Iverson right now, and I love it. He needs to get his kudos. He's an amazing player. I want to hear it. And then they start talking about like, no, it's artificial. It's just this new intelligence. It's like what's coming on. This is what's next. When you heard that like many years ago, like, okay, we'll see how big this is. But being of the age where, you were in high school when Google wasn't even around. I'm of that age that I got to be a part of new technologies that got brought up and then went away, and then some that stayed. And how do you adapt to them and do all that? AI is just the next one. It is something that we use as a tool to help make what we do a little bit better. But I think AI will make human qualities even more valuable, not less valuable. The curiosity, the judgments, trust and empathy that we all have with each other. Like technology can help us process information that much faster, but it can't replace the genuine human connections that we have. And if we still ground ourselves in holding ourselves accountable of like, hey, I used this tool to help me do X, Y, and Z faster, or to help me gain these insights, I still have to be the judgment of me about how do we use it as a team and how do we actually have that be a tool that we leverage as just another tool in our tool belt. Don't let it drive everything.
Yeah, I love that, dude. And I'll make you feel better about your age, because when I did book reports in high school and stuff, I used I had a whole stack of encyclopedias, man. I've done a lot of reports out of encyclopedias, free Google. So I was there with you. We're good.
All about the clip notes. The clip notes. Buy my Barnes and Noble.
Oh yes,
that's the way.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. But I think you touched on a lot of good points there, man. I think AI is a tool for a lot of things, right? And it's made my life easier in a lot of senses. You can utilize it. It can also be a detriment to some of us with the ADHD, because we can go down rabbit holes way too often with it. That can be a nightmare. But I also think, one thing that it lacks is empathy and understanding those nuances in conversation, right? And because it does have confirmation bias. It does tell you what you want to hear.
Absolutely.
It does. It'll let you know you're correct every sense of the way, right? But I think what real leaders understand is natural curiosity and natural empathy, and that ability to walk in. And one thing AI can't do right now is you look at somebody, they don't have to say a word for you to understand how they're feeling sometimes, and you look at them and you're just going, I know, I could tell this is a rough day for you, or something happened, or you're more energized today than normal. Those nuances are so important for a leader, in my opinion, to really understand their people, because I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. We'll see, maybe at some point where everybody's replaced by robots, but for the time being, companies are made of humans, right? And I think leaders, what makes a really good leader is understanding the human. And so, what gives you optimism with where leadership and workplace culture is heading? Because I do think we're at a pivot point right now with kind of what's, all the layoffs, everything happening, like uncertainty in the market, AI, like we're it does feel we're at this tipping point with workplace culture, but I tend to be optimistic with the conversations that are happening and
Well,
people speaking up. So
yeah,
curious
I
to get
mean,
your perspective.
I hate that it's happening after the fact, but I do
Yeah.
love how we have some companies
Yep.
that are saying like, yeah, so AI is costing more than what we thought, and we probably shouldn't have laid off everybody that we did, and now they're kind of backtracking that,
Yep.
right? Like
500
you,
million in tokens in 6 months.
yeah,
Whoops.
you would think that they would have done a little bit of that math before they jumped into this. So I think there's going to be that equal balance of like, okay, we need to bring back more humans. We can still leverage AI, but in
Totally.
a slightly different way, or however we want to do it. That's what corporations do. They like to just kind of
Yeah.
do on that seesaw of like, we're going to stand for this, we're going to do this, and now we're going to jump on this and do this trend. But unfortunately, that has a human toll. But the conversations that are going on now, that's what gives me the most optimism. Like, we're actually talking about it outside of like, hey, we made a mistake, we need to do this. On the other side of it, without AI, we're still talking about the important stuff about like mental health in the workplace. We're talking about
Yeah.
neurodiversity and how to get
Yeah.
benefit of that or see people that have that. We're talking about just the overall belonging and psychological safety in the workplace. We're recognizing that, like what we're talking about, great leadership doesn't come in one package. It's not the loudest person. It's not the fastest answer, the
Right.
fastest talker. It's a lot about that different perspectives that create better outcomes. So the fact that we're even talking about all of that inside of the workplace, and we have this new trend, whether it's the younger demographic that's becoming leaders or just other leaders
Yep.
that are slowly coming around to this new way of thinking about benefiting from a lot of the skill sets that people are bringing, is just a really amazing thing to see. And I think that we're moving
Totally.
from like a world that rewards conformity to a world that is like increasingly looking at the value contribution of no matter what it is, if it's providing value, I want to start rewarding that, not just reward you because you look and sound familiar.
Spot on, man. And I think, I haven't seen one good example in the market of, spending that $1 billion on token usage in 8 months or whatever that's
Yeah.
actually produced a meaningful product yet, or actually
No.
produced and made something more valuable. And I think now realizing, oh shit, we need those innovators. We need people who can come in and look
Yeah.
differently and produce and bring stuff, that, because I think you're spot on. I think that cost versus human capital is starting to tip back already way faster than we thought it would.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think also, man, like companies still need to innovate. You still have to put out
Absolutely.
products. You still have to, and to me, those ideas are still coming from humans.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been proven that that AIs can't really like be that creative when it comes to looking forward and kind of offering up something. They just want that confirmation bias of like, well, here's kind of how you talk to me, so I'm going to talk to you back in that
Yeah.
same voice. It's like that's not really helpful. That's where we need that diversity of thought. That's where we need those kind of sometimes uneasy discussions that humans can have with each other that unlock these other abilities and these other things. So
Totally.
Yeah. I
Totally.
think that's a great point, because I think a lot of these companies, they just view the AI as like so many commits.
Yep.
And they're like, oh yeah, the AI did so many commits compared to the person. It's like, yeah, we're technically getting more work done,
yes.
but are we doing any impactful business? How does that actually translate over?
Yeah.
And I remember seeing one of your posts. I don't remember the exact one, but it was about the quiet strengths within people, and you were speaking about neurodivergent people. For me, I don't know if I told you this, but I'm dyslexic.
Okay.
Written
I did
communication,
not.
written communication, not my thing.
Okay.
Not your
If
jam.
you throw me in a room, I'll chat with anybody.
I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Which is why you're showing up so well today. This is perfect. That makes sense.
Well, thank you. Thank you. But I think that's like one of the strengths that people aren't going to see on a resume. That's a strength that AI is not going to know.
Yeah.
That's a strength that like is easily overlooked.
Yeah.
For you, like what do you think some of those strengths are for like neurodivergent professionals?
And even just thinking about me and a couple other people that have talked to me about how they deal with like their ADHD at work. All of mine is very much internal. I'm not like a hyperactive person, but internally, my brain is just never stopping. And one of those things that I talked with that somebody at work was like, I thrive on being adaptable. And I think that's one of those things that companies do overlook is adaptability, because many neurodivergent professionals, they will spend years figuring out how they learn, how they best communicate, how they work best. And that creates a mindset of this continuous improvement. You're constantly learning and adjusting and refining how you want to show up, how you learn, what's new. I went through a million different notebooks and ways of trying to write down everything. I'm still doing that. But that also creates a lot of empathy for that leader, because when you've spent the better part of your career feeling different or misunderstood or become more aware of other people's perspectives, then that's the one reason that I think me as a leader, I try and care so much about creating those environments, because I've felt that way myself. So I want to try and flip that and say, like, well, how do other people want to show up? What do they need from me as a leader? And it's hard to dismiss someone's perspective when you're genuinely curious about why they see the world the way that they do.
Yeah, I love that, dude. All right, well, let's end this. This has been a great chat, dude. Let's end this with a little lightning round now.
Sure.
I preface it every time, and I'll keep doing it every episode, that our ADHD brains are not meant for lightning round, because we don't keep anything to one word or one sentence.
I'll try.
We'll do our best. So, yeah.
Or
what is right? What's a leadership trait that you value more now than you did 10 years ago?
Humility.
That's a good one. All right, what's one word that you think your team would use to describe you?
Ooh, is this on a good day or a bad day? This is the whole ADHD.
Yeah.
You can give both.
Sometimes it's just, maybe I'm not so good to myself, so I'm like, oh, today I don't think they like me. I think on the whole, though, I think the one word would be approachable.
Oh, that's a great one for a leader.
I want them to be able to at least come to me and talk to me. Sometimes it's a hard conversation. Other times it's, they need help. But yeah, approachable, I'd say.
Yeah, but that's a fantastic word for a leader. I think that's a really good one, and an undervalued asset to a leader. All right, one lesson from sports, retail, life, working in a flower shop when you were, or the farmland when you were a kid that still sticks with you today.
I'll pick probably from sports, because it's been very much a one-to-one with what I'm learning about myself, is that there has been times in my life, whether sports or professionally, when I've been given like an MVP. I've been the most valuable player. More times than not, I've actually been the most improved player. And I think that improvement requires that failure, and failure is always feedback. So for me, like, I get more value out of knowing I got better, that I improved, rather than just showing up and being the MVP and be like, great, I'm the best, I'm the one that's there. I get more value out of having a leader being like, wow, you're getting really great in this, or you're showing up like this, or here's what you still need to work on. And so I love that, because then at least I know where do I need to still work that part of myself.
I love that, dude. That award should be more valued in sports than it is, because I think lots of times that award's looked at as like, you weren't great, but you good job, buddy. But like in reality, it shows grit, it shows the hard work, it shows you're putting in the work behind the scenes. Like,
and even the older I got, the more I start to value the sixth man award and stuff when they start announcing those for the NBA. I'm like,
100%.
That person comes off the bench and they are like it. They are damn near a starter, but they're reliable, and that's like one of those things that you start to value a lot more.
Definitely. All right, we since we brought up the Nike, you and Devon brought up the Jordan side. We've got to go. Favorite Nike sneaker of all time?
For me, it's absolutely going to be the first Jordan that I ever got. When I was 10 years old, my grandmother bought me a great Christmas gift. She got me the Jordan 6, and I actually have it sitting here at my desk. So. I
remember those.
This is it.
That's sick. I love
black and infrared. It was this same color, so I have a sample that Nike and Jordan let me keep. But this was the number one for me. My first Jordan ever. It was the first year that the Bulls won the championship, so it holds a lot of meaning. And the first week that I started with Jordan Brand, they relaunched that shoe, and I thought, okay, this is kismet. This is like meant to happen. Like, this is a great thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that.
Great. And also that's like a real shoe, any shoe lover is going to know that you're a real fan. You're not naming the most expensive, like 10K pair or something.
No. What's yours, Devon? What's yours?
Probably the low top corks. Those are like my favorite pair as of right now.
Really? Okay.
They're essentially like smaller shoes that have cork outsides.
Okay. I
Interesting.
like that. You got to like what you like. You don't even have to
Yeah,
go OG
right.
with any of that. That's great.
Right. All right,
Yeah.
let's go. Our last question, we always end with this, because
Okay.
you know us, you know, we've talked a bunch. We always believe people are more than what's on a piece of paper, right? You're more than what's on your resume. So
Mhm.
what is one thing that is essential to who you are and how you show
Mm.
up in the workforce that would not show up on your resume?
Might be a little bit of recycling, but I do think it's that whole most improved thing of
Love that.
like, I know that I will not quit. I'm going to keep on pushing to learn something. But one of my mentors of mine said this early on when we started working together, that he just valued how much that I was like a coach, like a coachable person. I was adaptable, but also
Yeah.
resilient. Like I could leave the conversation after having a rough conversation and turn that into, okay, what's next? And not just beat myself up about it. Because it's a very ADHD thing to do that. But now
Yep.
instead, I've tried to
Yeah.
learn to flip that to, okay, but now that I was just given the game plan of like how to get really great. So let's go and do that. And so that's just been my way to turn that around. So I think the whole most improved or just how to be coachable and adaptable has been one of those things that have kept me moving up throughout
Yep.
my corporate career. And although I wish I would have been focused maybe earlier on about climbing the ladder and getting up higher, I just never was. I was just
No,
so
that's a good
involved
one
with
though.
Yeah.
experience. I was so involved with just having a great time doing the work that I wasn't worried
Yeah.
about moving up the ladder. So I think for me, it was just like, how did I learn from all those and continue to get better?
Love
Yeah.
that,
I
man.
mean,
That's
it matters so much
fantastic.
more the older you get. Like it's so
Yeah.
easy
Yeah.
once you get to 30 being like, all right, this is my life now. And
Yeah,
you're
you
like,
get more
Yeah.
no.
complacent.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this was awesome, buddy. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. We'll definitely have
Yeah.
to do it again, man, because I think we touch on, high level so many topics that I think a
Sure.
lot of people can take away and we'll get the wheels spinning. So we'll have to do this again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm up for it. And I'm always still learning and changing everything too, because none of what I
Yep.
talked about, I'm an expert at, but I'm getting there.
Nope.
So I'm like, just trying to get better every day. So
None of
part of
us
that
are
is
experts
listening
at
to this
any of this,
podcast
man.
too. So
Yeah, none of us are experts at any of this, but we feel the conversation's important, man. So
yeah,
really appreciate it. Looking forward to doing it again, man. And
absolutely.
thanks everyone for listening to another one.
Yeah. Thank
All
you
right,
all.
cheers,
Thank
guys.
you.